There were many protesters still on the streets. You can see it's getting dark there. West side of Manhattan you're looking at. And once again, protesters, there you see them on the streets in New York City. They are defying the curfew orders, still remaining calm, it appears, no signs of unrest, as we can see these protests continuing despite the calls for people to stay indoors in New York City, to not go out after 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Getting dark there, but still thousands of people outside in the streets of Manhattan. We're being told no reported incidents. Hopefully it will remain peaceful and calm, and they will return home soon.
And they're being joined by nurses and healthcare workers near New York's Union Square, who earlier today took a collective knee to honor the protesters who marched by to call for an end to police brutality. Nurses joined hundreds of protesters in chanting Black Lives Matter, and the two groups thanked one another and cheered. New York has seen 5 days of protests following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. The incident, which was captured, of course, on video, has prompted protests all around the world. Claiming he is backed by a silent majority, President Donald Trump turned the nation's capital into a model for the overwhelming force he believes critical to stop sometimes violent protests which have spread across the country in a time of racial unrest. His tactics were criticized today by some fellow Republicans as well as his presumptive Democratic opponents.
Some say the violent dispersal of peaceful protests near the White House last night was a physical manifestation of the rhetorical culture war he has stoked since before he was elected.
Yeah, the president wanted to make an aggressive action at the nation's capital where he wields disproportionate powers. And joining us tonight from Washington, D.C. to discuss what powers he has and hasn't is the Political Science Department Chair at Howard University, Dr. Ravi Perry. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you.
Dr. Perry, can you tell us exactly what's happening in D.C. right now? Fences are up. Yesterday, peaceful protesters tear gassed. Give us your perspective and your thoughts. Tell us what's happening.
Well, the district residents and the DMV region have been articulating their grievances with the state. And here in Washington, D.C., of course, we are the head of state. This is the nation's capital. This is arguably the most important city in the world. And so what we find here are that young people, college students, high school age students mainly, and older people as well, from all faiths, from all colors and backgrounds, are coming together mostly to peacefully rally in Lafayette Square right there in front of the White House, which, by the way, is a public park that the police have closed off and occupied, and now have erected a 8-foot steel chain-locked fence to ensure that protesters do not advance as they did last night. And because the officers themselves have chosen to be violent toward protesters who have been doing nothing but rallying for the most part peacefully. We forget that tear gas in this country is illegal. It's illegal as a military agent, so it certainly should be illegal in the downtown streets of the nation's capital. And yet this is what the actions have been as ordered by the president toward our own American citizens. And what we find here in D.C. is that people from all walks of life, for most part, are rallying peacefully, including tonight.
And also, Dr. Perry, we're hearing just the frustration of the voice of Mayor Bowser, whose hands are in some ways just tied because D.C. is not a state. It probably should be, but it's not. So there are all these different policing agencies, but what kind of power does the president have to override her power as the mayor?
Well, certainly, I would say that D.C. statehood is something that most D.C. residents like myself fully support, and it is critical for that issue to move forward, for the presidency to change hands in order for that to really have any likelihood of becoming law, as it has been passed already by the House of Representatives. But in terms of who basically has jurisdiction here, what we find in Lafayette Square is is a multifaceted set of militarized police officers from a variety of departments. And so you have actual deployed National Guard representing the United States military in full riot gear. You also have some members of the Metropolitan Police Department. You also have some of the U.S. Park Police. And so there are all these forces convening together, for the most part, forming a line against these peaceful protesters. The hope is, I think, for all of us, that the protests continue to be, for the most part, safe and nonviolent, and that looting, which has been documented across the country, is largely happening from those who are not residents in these cities in which the looting is occurring. Those of us who live here, we want our businesses to be open, but we first and foremost want our rights as Black people and as Americans to be protected when we engage with the police.
All right, Dr. Ravi Perry in D.C., thank you so much for your time and for your insights, and we'll speak with you again soon, sir.